Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Jamil. I'm a builder in the city of Capernaum. Like many of my trade, I build nice houses, but I don't live in one, and I'm highly sought after for my work, but not my opinion. My city, Capernaum, is a beautiful one. It's like a jewel set on the silver rim of the Sea of Galilee, and there's prosperity there because its beauty attracts many rich Jews and Gentiles. In fact, our new synagogue was built by a Roman centurion. And though I may not share in the prosperity the way I would like, there is work and there are friends. Recently, my city has become a center for religious talk because this new rabbi from Nazareth, Jesus, has come there to live with his mother and brothers in the house of Simon, Jonah's son. Now that is a nice house. It was built for him by his father for his wedding. My friends and I worked on it. Wide, spacious courtyard, beautiful covered porch, and then a house with many rooms. Ever since Jesus has come, you can see people in the courtyard or on the porch as Jesus teaches. Now, we had heard many things about Jesus. Healing the official son and Simon's mother, but our religious leaders, who we trust because they understand the law so well, they were unsure of him, and so were we, because you see, at that time, we did not know. But then the time of pain came for my friends and me. For 30 years, Ami, Philip, Zacharias, Johannes, and I, we grew up together. We went to school together, we had our bar mitzvahs together, and now we work together. It was as if the flesh of our hearts had grown together. When Philip's daughter died, it was as if someone had cut off my own arm. But then the next year, God blessed them with another child. We were brothers. And that is why we felt such pain and despair when the accident happened, because you see, at that time, we still did not know. The accident happened to Ami. We were working on the roof of a tall building, and Ami, who was strong and full of life, was carrying a bundle of wood on his shoulder up a ladder. I was waiting for him at the top. And suddenly, one of the rungs of the ladder broke, and I reached for him as he fell, only to see him strike his head and his back on rocks that had been piled near the ladder. The four of us were there in moments, and we picked him up and we wept as we carried him home. In the days that followed, Ami revived, but he couldn't move. The doctor said he would never walk again. And then our religious leaders came, and we hoped. But they looked at Ami and they told him that this accident was proof that his sins were so many that punishment must begin in this life. And they told him to confess his sins. And we also begged Ami to confess his sins, because that's how we had been taught. And we trusted our leaders. But this did not bring hope. And we watched the spirit of our friend become bitter and alone. On one of those days, we went to him and we said, Ami, let us take you to Jerusalem. Perhaps there'll be healing for you in the temple. But his reply was so bitter and dark. He said, no. The temple is empty. It is filled with the breath of desperate wishes. And I said to him, Ami, no, you must continue to hope. And he said, hope? Hope? I hope? I hope for death, because death is all that is left for me. He was dying. And our leaders couldn't help him. And at that time, we still did not know. Many days passed. One day we were together in the afternoon, and Zacchaeus came, and he told us that Jesus and Simon and Andrew, the sons of Zebedee, and some others had come back to Capernaum, and that the city was starting to gather at Simon's house. But we had been to see him that morning, and he wouldn't even talk to us. The sun was setting, but we were looking at the ground. And then, as if by a whim, Johanna says, if only I could touch him and give him my life. And these words stirred us like a sudden storm on the sea. Of course, Jesus, maybe the stories were true about Simon's mother-in-law and the official son. And like desperate men rowing before the gale of a storm, we struck off for Ami's house. We had to pass Simon's house, and you could see the people starting to fill his courtyard. And our hearts began to beat harder, and we quickened our pace for fear that we wouldn't be able to see Jesus. When we arrived at Ami's house, you could feel the despair that had replaced the joy. But when we opened the door to his inner chamber, it was as if death had struck us with its fist. There was Ami on the floor, lying facing the wall, waiting in the darkness for death. I went in and rolled him over, and he screamed, leave me to die. And I said, no, Ami, this time you will listen to us. We're taking you to the Messiah. I hadn't even meant to say that Jesus was the Messiah, because you see, at that time we still did not know. The four of us picked up Ami and we laid him on a pallet, and we ran with him through the streets. How will we see Jesus? I don't know. We'll make a way through the crowd. We'll make a way through the wall in the courtyard if we have to. But when we turned the corner of the street to Simon's house, our hearts sank within us, for the street was as full of people as a great dragnet full of fish. And then Ami began to cry. And it was as if a voice called to us. And our resolve rose within us. We had to see Jesus. And then Philip, God bless Philip, he said, the roofs, to the road of the roofs. I don't even know who we borrowed the ropes from. It doesn't matter. In moments, the four of us were on the roofs 4 houses down, and we made our way across them with the speed and quickness of men who have lived on them. Soon we were on the roof of Simon's porch, and the 4 of us made quick work of this roof, which is built much lighter than the main roof of the house. Below, the conversation had stopped. A place had cleared where some of the wood had fallen. The eyes below told many stories. Simon, he was upset. His roof. The Pharisees, their eyes were filled with annoyance and disgust. But Jesus' eyes, he looked at us with such respect and love. The 4 of us lowered Ami into the room. Ami's blank eyes, searching for the eyes of Jesus, found the eyes of the Pharisees first. And they moved away from him as if he were a leper. And we could see his face begin to wither with the fear of their reproach. If I had been down there for 1 minute, I would have made them pay for despising someone so hopeless and weak. But Jesus' eyes seemed to flash with a light from deep within him. And he turned to me. And I knew something was going to happen. It was quiet. And then softly, with a force that could have pushed the mountains into the sea, Jesus said to me, "My son, your sins are forgiven." A great restlessness arose among the scribes because you see, only God can forgive sins. And as if he knew their thoughts, Jesus turned to them and said, "Why do you have these questionings within you? Which is easier to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Rise, take up your pallet and go home'?" The air was tense. You could feel the hatred of the Pharisees for Jesus and me. But again, Jesus' eyes seemed to flash, and he said to them, "But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." And then turning from their swollen faces, he looked at me like a father to his sick child. And he said, "I say to you, rise, take up your pallet and go home." And he did. We almost fell off the roof. Ami stood up. He embraced Jesus. He picked up his pallet and started going through the crowd. We were down from the roof in moments, and we met him in the middle of the courtyard. And we embraced, and we kissed, and we screamed. And I turned, and I looked at Jesus as he was watching us, and our eyes met. And then I knew. I knew that I was looking into the eyes of God himself, because now I knew that he could forgive sins. If only we had known sooner, the despair, the anguish, the pain would not have been. They are out there, men, women, and children, in sickness of heart, without hope, waiting in the darkness for death. We must tell them about this Jesus, because he is the Son of God, and he can forgive their sins.